Right, by now you guys have had everyone and their mom try to sell you on 3D printing and woodworking, but today I have a pretty good argument for that case that might be a little different than what you've already seen. So this is a board game, like quite literally it's two boards, and it has these spherical pockets that marbles go into. Now the owner of said game brought it to me wanting 7 more games made, but someone else had already started working on this project and then bailed on them. Said person made 2 sets out of sapele, and then for some reason made 5 more sets out of white oak. And for some other reason entirely, they made the white oak sets a completely different size than the sapele boards. They started to make the pockets on one of the sapele boards, I'm assuming with this router bit that I was given, and I'm assuming a drill press, and that's about when they bailed on the whole project. Now my task is just to finish them, as in make the rest of the pockets. Oh, and this is a really important Christmas gift, and with just a few days to go, time is of the essence. So let's just try this at the drill press. I cheated a bit already and used the 3D printer to make a master template that I could then use to create another template. And really the reason I did it this way is I could just work out the math for the hole locations on the computer. And in this case, since I'm already on the computer, I might as well just expand it a little and send it to a 3D printer. Now, I realize this seems a bit belt and suspender-ish to some, but it's always a good idea in these situations to have a master template. Should something go wrong and a template gets damaged, it's always a good idea to have that master template there to fall back on. With the template made, I could test fit the router bit to make sure it was going to have enough clearance. And it was a little bit tight, but not so tight that I couldn't get the router bit into the hole. Now I know, don't use router bits in a drill press, and normally I would agree. But mainly that's because drill presses don't go to nearly the speed needed to make decent cuts with a router bit. But it is possible, and in a bind, this is most likely the method I would choose. My drill press's power switch had different plans though, and with all the vibration and chatter from the router bit, it kept kicking the machine off. So for me, I was gonna have to find another alternative. And this is where 3D printing comes into play. Since I don't have a router guide bushing big enough for this router bit, I'm gonna have to make one. And in this case, I just designed a guide bushing into a new sub base and made templates to match. Now, if you have been thinking about getting a 3D printer, I 100% recommend getting Bambu Lab's P1S. And yes, before you ask, Bambu Lab did send me this printer in exchange for a few words about it. But here's the thing, I've been using Bambu Lab printers for about 1.5 years, and about half my income actually comes from the products that I design and make with them. So it's really pretty easy to come up with a few kind words. I personally recommend this printer, the P1S, for use in a woodworking shop because it has the same roughly 10 by 10 by 10 inch capacity as Bambu's flagship X1C at a fraction of the price. And it's fully enclosed, meaning all the working bits are inside an actual enclosure, which helps keep the dust out and the noise down, 2 things that are nice to have in a woodworking environment. And it'll print anything you're gonna be comfortable throwing at it right out of the box, including this really cool rubbery filament called TPU. And once you've been printing for a while and you start feeling more adventurous, the P1S can be upgraded with inexpensive parts that you can get directly from Bambu Lab to print the fancy engineering filaments. And I know someone's gonna mention this, and yeah, the X1C can do a little bit more out of the box, and it has it has a far superior in every way screen compared to the P1S, but it's also a lot more expensive, and having owned and used both for prototyping and production work, I can honestly say the P1S is the best option for most people. That's why I have 6 of them now. Now, Bambu also sent me an AMS, or Automatic Material System, which houses 4 rolls of filament and can automatically switch between those rolls based on the task. This is great for really long or overnight prints where you're worried you might not have enough filament on a roll to complete a job, and you might not necessarily be nearby to load a new one on yourself if that one runs out. That also opens the door for using multiple colors in prints as well. Now, I'm not really into the whole multicolor print thing, but one place I have been using it is for this potential new product line I'm working on that incorporates these orange rings as a part of brand recognition. Where I previously had to print the rings separate and then just secure them in place afterwards, the AMS allows me to just print it all in one shot, and that saves me a ton of assembly time and storage space, honestly, because I don't have to print and store all those rings separately. Anyways, a huge thank you to Bambu Lab, not only for sending out the P1S and the AMS, but also just for providing the world with easy plug-and-play printers that I honestly consider to be a staple tool in my shop. And like most of my tools that help me somehow make more tools, usually, the first thing I asked this one to do was make a new sub base for the router with the built-in bushing. This bushing is sized to fit holes in the next thing that I printed, which are these templates. So this is essentially the same thing as using a template guide bushing. It's just that it's permanently built into the router subbase. Everything seemed to be going just kind of okay when I was routing the Sapele boards though. There was a bit of grabbing and biting towards the end of the cuts, and it was only compounded, of course, when I moved to the much harder white oak. And to make matters worse, my router became increasingly harder to plunge as well. So not only was I fighting what appeared to be possibly a dull bit, but fighting the router meant I was slamming into the material when it finally plunged. This was causing tear out and burn marks, and while I knew the customer wasn't too concerned with this, it was driving me absolutely nuts. And this is kind of where the story comes to a dramatically quick end, because I was so pressed for time that I didn't have time to film a whole lot. But I made another subbase with a built-in bushing for my OF1400. And the next morning, with the client literally on his way to my house to pick up the boards, I made the executive decision to run out to Woodcraft, grab a new round nose bit, and I actually finished the last 3 or 4 sets of boards with him in the shop, hanging out. In the end, despite the router bit and the issues, 3D printing really made this job possible. I mean, sure, I could have ordered a guide bushing from Festool since I couldn't even find a Porter cable style one online that was big enough. And then I would have had to have hopefully had a Forstner bit that matched the outside diameter of it. But having a 3D printer meant I didn't have to. Just think of a 3D printer as another tool to add to your arsenal that opens up the door for more problem solving and creativity. Merry Christmas, you guys.
That they used to play on. They used to play on this board at their house all the time, and that was the game. That was the marbles game. And so what they wanted to do was give that game to their grandkids. And so for Christmas, that's what they're doing. And so I can tell you what's great for me is first of all getting to meet you guys and understanding what's going on, but secondly to be able to tell that story and say, hey, this is something. This is handmade. I got some video of Jody making them, and this is how they were made right here.
That's super cool.